Okay, so Joy, let's start with you as you're in the kind of top left quadrant of the screen. Let's take back a little bit back at 2019, and with that in hindsight, the dust has settled. What was the biggest learning that you took away from 2019 in terms of how you operate, or how the world of local search operates?
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things I've kind of learned throughout this whole experience being in this industry is ranking factors don't really change year to year. So I don't think there was anything in 2019 where I was like, oh, there's this new ranking factor that didn't exist before. So I think, traditional local SEOs, if there's one thing that they need to focus more on, it would probably just be like traditional organic kind of SEO, like the traditional stuff of optimizing websites and stuff. I feel like that is likely the biggest thing we see people are weak on, that, I would say is definitely gaining importance, but it's always been important. So it's not a new thing. But that's probably the one thing if I had to identify a single thing to focus on.
Okay. Ben, same question for you.
Yeah, I have to agree with Joy. I mean, pretty much local search year over year has not changed much. The same tenets actually that worked back in the 90s, 2000s still really work today. Having great website content, optimizing for user experience, getting good links. Basically, just actually optimizing for your customer, not really optimizing for Google. I guess that's what I would have to say.
Okay. David, I've got maybe a slightly different question for you. Given that I think we had fairly similar answers from kind of Ben and Joy. I mean, is there anything different to what they said that you would bring up before I ask another question?
Not particularly. I would totally agree that I haven't seen any major shifts in what's driving rankings or what's driving success, more importantly than rankings. But I do think that that Google's shift that's been underway for, let's say, the last 4 years or so towards making GMB more interactive and in some cases transactional is continuing. And so I think that while I agree that the website is still is essential, as it's always been for providing a good customer experience and for influencing the terms that you show up for, we certainly see a continued path of more customer interactions happening through phone calls, driving directions, walking directions. Increasingly, I think in 2020, I think we'll see Google double down on messaging. So I would just caution people that while the website is definitely important, I don't think you can just look at GA for the value of the website. You also need to be looking at how your GMB profile is performing in terms of attracting customers, because customers may not actually be clicking through to your website.
Yeah, I was about to say, actually, David, that really brings up a great point, that 2020 is probably going to bring us even closer to that kind of zero click that everybody's been talking about, where transactions are happening directly on Google.
Well, we're seeing it really varies based on industry, though. Like we have some clients where I'd say, yeah, like a lot of their transactions do happen on Google. We have others where still more transactions happen on their website. So it really does vary. I think if you're doing emergency services, then you're going to see more and more transactions happening directly on Google for sure. Not necessarily if you're like an attorney.
So what do you mean by emergency services? And can we kind of dig into that notion of which businesses and also what those businesses should be doing to kind of capitalize on those zero-click searches?
Yeah, so we noticed a very large difference between, like, for example, an attorney versus a locksmith. Like in a locksmith, you don't have a lot of time to research a company. You're more likely to choose someone based on, just doing a quick search on Google and seeing who shows up. So generally those industries are inundated with spam as well for that exact reason. People realize that consumers aren't always vetting the businesses that they're looking up versus like, a business that you're going to invest thousands of dollars in, that you have some time to think about, like an attorney. Those types of cases, people might do more research. We see a lot more transactions happening on the actual site, and organic search, like clicks from organic search versus GMB, tend to also matter more for those industries.
Okay. David, obviously you work, kind of working at ThriveHive, you interact as a business with a huge number of sort of SMBs and provide, I guess a range of services. What industry specifically do you kind of specialize in, or is it across the board?
We're open across the board. We do have a number of sort of industry association partnerships. For example, the Association of Bodywork and Massage Professionals, skincare professionals, hair care professionals, the Yoga Alliance. So things that are a little bit more in sort of the personal care and sort of fitness and lifestyle categories. I would say we're a little bit heavier, but we're definitely. I mean, our offerings are available across the board, regardless of category.
Okay, and how do you see kind of advice you give or the service you provide changing with this, movement to kind of Google being the new homepage?
Sure. Yeah. So I think we feel that GMB is an easier starting point for a lot of businesses that we talk to, which tend to be, I would say, in the very small business category, the VSB category. A lot of them are solo practitioners that might be renting a chair at a hair salon or something like that, and they don't have a lot of budget and they don't have a lot of technical expertise to set their website up. So we sort of feel like GMB is the natural starting point for these folks, and then we are actually layering in a website on the back end of that initial effort. But really, as Mike Blumenthal's been saying for the last several years, Google and particularly GMB is now your first impression to a customer. That business profile, that knowledge panel is so front and center. And so at the very least, you want to make sure that you're capturing people who are looking you up by name, making sure that you're presenting a great image to them with really strong photos, a great review profile. You're answering questions, even if they haven't been asked yet. You're answering FAQs on your knowledge panel. On your business profile, and then from there expanding into other areas, including a website, including ongoing content, those sorts of things.
I guess it's interesting that very small business kind of category. I mean, do you have much kind of aggregate data on what percentage of interactions are happening in and around GMB versus the website for those types of businesses?
Yeah, so we and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me right now, but we totally, our data totally backs up what Joy said. It's very category dependent in terms of where interactions are happening. Ironically, some of the outliers that I do remember from the data that I presented at Local U earlier this fall, photography, which you would think would be, everybody should just upload a portfolio to GMB. What more information do consumers need? That was actually one of the categories where website clicks were the largest percentage of GMB interactions. Some of the more surprising ones I thought were insurance agents. A lot of times insurance agents were just getting a call directly from GMB, where I would think that might be a category where consumers would want to do a little more research. So I think it does vary by category. And I think that, I guess my advice is just to not look only at Google Analytics data, which I do think a lot of marketers are doing. And speaking from personal experience as a consultant for a larger academic medical center here in Portland, I think the whole concept that people are interacting with your business before they get to your website is totally foreign to a lot of executives across the board. So I just want to make sure that we're not sort of handicapping ourselves on performance just by looking at Google Analytics.
Joy, I might just come to you, and then I'll come to Ben. Another question. Really what David talked about needing to look at different data sources to get the true picture of what's going on. I know you've expressed frustration in the past around the state of GMB insights and the kind of accuracy of that. Where do things stand, or where do you see things standing with how much trust and reliance you can put on GMB insights?
Yeah, so I actually tweeted out, I think it was yesterday, a bunch of threads in the local search forum, recent threads, like the last 30 days, all different on insights and people's frustrations. One of them's like, insights have flatlined. Another's insights have spiked. So it's like across the board, there are constant problems with the data. You'll just see things flatline, and then you'll see these spikes. Some of the recent ones we've noticed is like messaging isn't showing up in there. So all these businesses we know are getting tons of messages through Google My Business. Their insights graphs say 0. So we brought that up with Google several times, but it's just it's constant. Like it'll be accurate for a month, and then something will happen, and there'll be all kinds of stuff missing. So I always vote for using UTM codes inside Google My Business, using call tracking. So rely on Search Console data, and your call tracking data are much more accurate than anything you're ever going to find in GMB insights.
Fine. So essentially, kind of bypassing the GMB insights by pushing that data into a private system.
We do look at it because I think there are parts of it that's valuable. Like, so we like to look at trend line graphs and stuff and things like that. I think the search queries data is also very valuable. So it's kind of frustrating that you can't get that via the API yet, but the information in that section I find is interesting and unique. Not the same data you'll find in Search Console.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, the search queries data, I believe, is actually is supposed to be 100% direct and accurate, actually, regarding, they say, but of course, all the other information and insights is way low.
Ben, what's the biggest change that you've made at Steady Demand in terms of the way you approach your offering, the way you approach sort of optimization and work for your customers in 2019? What was the biggest change you made to your offering and why?
I would say that the biggest thing that we've done is started to ensure more that our customers are protected basically against any kind of possible suspension. Because in 2019, I think that was one of the biggest things that we had. I know we're going to be talking about spam later, but with spam, of course, comes suspensions. And so we've really prepared our clients, our entire client base, even they're all legit, but it doesn't matter. False positives still occur. The other thing is that we were kind of ready for BERT and Bedlam before they all rolled out, mainly because we use semantic search principles pretty much with every single thing that we do. And we focus on engagement, especially with GMB. And that's what BERT and Bedlam really was all about. It was all about, natural language processing along with, what they call neural matching, which really, at the end of the day, it's just semantic search. But yeah, I would say that those are the things that we focused on mainly.
So sorry, just going to that kind of BERT and Bedlam piece, can you just expand on what it was that you did, in advance of this kind of rolling out that you benefited from when they landed?
Well, when you take a look at basic, semantic search principles, right? It's really trying to go after more of the long tail, and it's also trying to derive meaning with an entity. So being able to put together the fact, I think, Will Scott actually had a great slide about this, about wedding bands, for instance, how there can be a lot of meaning behind wedding band. Like you can have a wedding band on your finger, or you could hire a wedding band. Well, how's Google going to understand the difference between that, in a sense? So by basically producing content that is answering a lot of questions well ahead before the user's even asking those types of questions, you're able to kind of optimize a little bit more from a semantic sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I just wanted to kind of expand on that a little bit. Joy, what tactic or approach really changed for you in 2019 in terms of what you offer, or anything that you think is actually kind of really significant for our audience to kind of hear about that you've changed?
Yeah, to be honest, not a lot tactic wise. I think our focus has always been on like on-site and backlink. Backlinks are still super strong. And I'm not talking about like citation building. I'm talking about like links that your competitors don't have, trying to get mentioned in the press, being parts of different organizations, stuff like that. Those strategies have always been super winning strategies, and I don't think any of that has changed. As far as on-site, I think one trend that we've noticed, which I wouldn't really say is specific to 2019, but probably maybe the last 5 years, is having more content on your site is not always a good thing. So, you often see this in local SEO where they'll have like 5 pages on their website targeting, like one will be auto insurance and one will be car insurance. And these are the same things, but someone out there told them that it was a good idea to have a blog where they post an article every week, and it's like just garbage. That tactic does not work. Hasn't worked for, I'd probably say, a few years, but like we've seen some good wins from consolidating content and cutting down the garbage that exists on sites and stuff. So that I think that's still a kind of a thing that unfortunately a lot of small business owners don't seem to get, because there are still people out there telling them that they need fresh content on their site and they need like a blog, and it doesn't make sense for most SMBs to have a blog, to be completely honest. So
there's a balance there, isn't there, in terms of the quantity of content, because some SMBs will have a 3-page site, and they do need to add more content. But once you there's a kind of critical mass or a sort of tipping point, isn't there? I mean, David, you obviously, presumably with your sort of much smaller businesses that you deal with, that kind of content creation must be quite a struggle for them.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the industry, right? So I'd say like dentists, for example, are a good industry example where it's hard to come up with valuable content. Like we might have a dentist with a 50-page website, but we still see like 90% of the traffic are on the top 5 pages. And you could create pages all day long about crowns and Invisalign and all these different things, but like people just don't search that crap. So they don't get much traffic. Whereas like lawyers, on the other hand, gosh, like you could have hundreds of pages because there's so many legal questions that people ask on Google and so many topics to write about that you almost never run out of stuff to add. So it really depends on the industry.
So how do you change your tactics in that particular case where you've got dentists where traffic hits a few pages and lawyers where traffic hits a lot of pages? How does your strategy flip?
Yeah, so I mean, as an agency, we're really big on customizing stuff. So we do not do the same things for every client. We start usually by doing an audit. That audit will kind of dictate what strategies we use, and it really varies. So I kind of pride myself in that, but I know a lot of agencies, they like to make things scalable and they like to have custom, like you get X, Y, Z in this package. And I just find that type of packaging often doesn't work and doesn't provide the same amount of value. So we're just big on, depends on the business, their market, their competition, and like customize it based on what they need. Okay.
Thank you, Joy. David, kind of question for you. And this actually came from a customer or an attendee sort of prior to the kind of webinar. The question was just, they wanted to kind of really firmly understand, what were the kind of current foundational ranking factors? What does that really mean? And, what does it mean necessarily for a new client they're working on or a new business they're working on versus an established existing business? Can you kind of walk us through how you see the kind of foundational landscape as it is today?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I would definitely, unfortunately, I think that a business name with keyword relevance to what you want to rank for still matters a great deal. So if you happen to be just starting out a business, I would think about the semantic impact of what you choose to name yourself, for sure. Primary category and in some sense secondary categories as well, provided they are relevant to what you do, can definitely have a big impact. And then beyond that, I would say the third most important thing, which is much harder than those first two, is a really strong, constant stream of reviews. I think that reviews and sort of dovetailing with the conversation you were just having with Joy around content, reviews are really the most scalable form of content creation for most small businesses. Your customers are going to do a better job of explaining what they like about you as a business and what makes you unique than you are in most cases. And it's certainly much easier for someone else to do that work for you. So I think a constant stream of reviews is probably the third place I'd focus on. From there, you get into things like, hey, you should have at least a handful of really great photos showing off your business. You should be answering Q&A. I think service lists and product lists are going to become more important in the future, but that's kind of how we sort of structure our typical GMB curriculum. On the website front, Joy and Ben already really hit the nail on the head. I think you got to know, what the main types of content that you should have in your industry are. So yeah, if you're a dentist, personally, I would say that, customer stories, a lot of photos. I think in the kinds of insurance that you take, how can people schedule an appointment? Think about your customers and the kinds of content you should have on your website that your customers are going to engage with. So those are kind of the ultimate foundations. From there, you definitely get into, link building and I think more traditional sort of PR efforts beyond that.
Okay, great, Dave. That was very thorough. Ben, anything you'd like to kind of add in terms of the way you see it? Do you see the world differently to David? Obviously, David comes from a very kind of GMB focused world at this point in time, given the kind of client base he's got. How might that differ with the sort of clients that you work with?
Actually, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think Joy and David just summed up everything pretty well. Actually, there's not too much to add to it. From a foundational aspect of things, I mean, we do the same things, right? So we hit GMB, we optimize GMB, we're making sure that we're doing the Q&A, we're giving our clients a review strategy. We developed a tool for them to upload, pictures on a regular basis via text message versus having to log into Google My Business. That's a big point of friction, especially for multi-locations. And I mean, we have found out that, by uploading photos on a regular basis, you can increase your views by a certain type of percentage. Which that's nice. It gets you exposure. Doesn't necessarily get you new clients. But the other thing that we focus a lot on is and we figure this to be foundational, and that is depending on the industry and the niche, is looking at what kind of spam is in the area. So looking mainly for more fake listings than, say, name stuffing than anything else. But, it's the easiest win for any client, and any agency really is going after spam.
Okay, we'll come on to a bit more of a spam discussion. Question from a customer, and I'll put this to you, Joy. This is a direct kind of question that came in. It says, once you've fully optimized your GB profile, you've essentially enhanced it with all the kind of sort of static data you can have in there. What extra kind of ranking value or impact do you get from things like posts and Q&A and applying to reviews, that kind of ongoing sort of management piece? How much value does that have in a ranking context? And how much value do you see that having beyond rankings, beyond that visibility?
Yeah, so other than reviews, I'd say the only other really things to keep an eye on that really influence ranking is new business categories. That's something I track as part of my training. But like, for example, I work with a psychologist, and like there was a new category that was added in December to Google My Business, and it was like child psychologist. So if you were huge into therapy for kids, you would want to add that category to your listing because that would have a immediate ranking benefit. So that type of stuff we keep an eye on. I think that's important. In addition to that, if you're like in a service area business setting, or you're like a lawyer or any industry where you don't have to show up in person, there's usually a lot of spam. So it's not so much what you do to your listing, but like actively looking and reporting listings that are outranking you that shouldn't be there is another ongoing strategy that seems to never die. As far as like posts and all that kind of stuff, I think posts are probably one of the only ongoing things that might make sense for some industries. Like if you've got a lot of specials and promos, although they're not direct ranking factors, I think they could be indirect if they're helping your click-through rate. And obviously Q&A is more of like a customer management thing. Like you want to be responding to people, not because it's like you're ranking, it's because your customers, you don't want to piss them off by thinking you're not paying attention to them. So they're more business strategies than ranking strategies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what if I could just jump in for a second, we tend to think of making sure that you're converting the people that are already seeing your profile, right? So that's images, that's a post that might get highlighted alongside your listing in a 3-pack. That's responding to reviews to show future customers that you are paying attention to what people are saying. So I wouldn't necessarily think about those as necessarily, oh, that's going to take me to number one. But if I do all of them well and I stay up to date on it, I'm probably going to convert a lot more customers who I'm already ranking for.
Yeah, and I have to agree with both Joy and David on this. I mean, and I think, Joy, that you really hit the nail on the head. That most of this doesn't have to really do with ranking per se, but it definitely does have to do with the business goals. Google at the end of the day wants to help the merchant, and they also want to help the consumer, and they want to help match those two up together perfectly. So if you're constantly basically optimizing your website and your Google My Business profile, and you're thinking more about the business implications of whatever you're doing, then in that sense, in theory, you're going to be rewarded from a local search standpoint.
Okay. One thing, you guys are agreeing way too much with each other. I was hoping you in this sort of webinar. You
should invite Dan Leaps into the next one. You're guaranteed to have a controversy on your hands. So just
him on his own. So you mentioned obviously about this sort of different way of considering the impact of ongoing sort of posting and responding to kind of questions. In the typical kind of like agency client sort of model, do clients get that? If they come to you for a services to win them clients, I know a lot of them think in the world of rankings. Is it hard to kind of educate them and sort of swing them around to saying, this won't boost your rankings, but actually you've got all these other benefits that it will bring you. Do they generally get that? And the second question is, are agencies able to sell that? Maybe David, you could pick this up.
Sure. So we tend to position this as more along the lines of getting found and standing out as opposed to ranking, right? So focusing on, again, relevance and conversion in that your profile will look better and will convert more customers than your competitors. I think that there's definitely one of the things that we were talking about yesterday, Myles, was like, I think that agencies could be doing a better job of segmenting customers than what I've seen historically in the SEO industry, and taking a hard look at what you can do or maybe can't achieve for a potential client who's contacting you. I mean, I think it's totally unrealistic for a personal injury lawyer in Chicago to spend $1,000 a month on SEO and expect to get into a 3-pack, right? So either you need to adjust how you're positioning your services for that $1,000 a month, or you need to say, look, I'm sorry, I'm not sure that my agency is a great fit for you. So I think that that's kind of how I'd start to evolve the agency positioning a little bit beyond just trying to fixate on rankings, which A, are getting harder and harder to track, and B, I think you're a little bit focusing on the wrong thing. You can rank number 1 with a super spammy business name in a lot of categories still. But A, that listing is probably not going to be around for very long if it's going up against one of Joy or Ben's clients. And B, even a customer who sees that, probably not likely to pick up the phone and call that spammy looking business.
David, how do you see the kind of role of agencies changing in 2020 and beyond?
Sure. I think we all three probably agree here, although I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouth. I think that we're definitely starting to see the need for a more holistic view of what local search means. I think, when I started in this industry back in the late 2000s, you could do a lot with just a really well optimized, at the time, place page, right? A lot of custom categories. Basically that was all you needed to rank instantly and get a lot of customers that way. I think that the space is more competitive now. I think Google has obviously increased the percentage of clicks that are becoming paid, especially on mobile phones, especially with new offerings like local service ads. So I think you need to have a pretty holistic view of the kinds of services you're offering. It can't just be, hey, I'm going to sell you a horizontal citation package, and I'm going to update your existing title tags, and I'll update your category at GMB. I don't think that's going to cut it in certainly in a lot of the more competitive areas.
Okay, thanks. Joy, you run your own agency. Do you see the world similarly to David?
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to realize there are different types of agencies, right? Then price point is usually the biggest thing that dictates like what people can do. I think, like David said, if you're a personal injury lawyer in Chicago, you would need a much bigger budget than if you are a barber in, the middle of Utah in, like a very rural area. So I think it varies based on the industry and the market that you're in. And I think there's a lot of agencies out there that maybe could get really good success for a small business in a really uncompetitive market space. But I think it's important to know, like, if you're, looking at huge competition, you need backlinks, you need link building. You can't just do like traditional, okay, optimize my listing and I'm going to rank. Or if you expect as well that you can just do it once and then rank forever, you're out to lunch. Like, it's not going to happen. So I think it's important to make sure like the agency that you're choosing has actually got the right service for you, because there are different agency types when it comes to local SEO, and some types are, like David said, their market is very different than ours. Like, their average customer is very different than ours. And I think it's important to kind of have that distinction and know who you need, what kind of budget you need.
Speaking to you, Joy, you have your own agency. What keeps you up at night when you think about the future and the threats, the agency model, or your business as usual kind of sort of service?
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully I'm not being naive here. Not a whole lot. I mean, I think as local SEOs, we've got pretty good job security. I don't think Google's going anywhere. I mean, I guess that would be probably the biggest threat. Like, if something major happened with Google to kill their share of the market, then obviously what we do would we do would be less effective. But I don't think, GMB is going to be paid or any of those kind of conspiracy theories. I don't buy into any of that crap. So I really think the future is still very bright for those of us in the space.
Oh, come on, Joy. Don't you think GMB is going to go in the graveyard?
Yeah. No.
Ben, you run a sort of, Ben, how do you describe your business actually? Do you describe it as an agency or a service provider?
I'd say we are more of a hybrid agency and service provider. So, we offer a lot of, spam fighting services, like dedicated spam fighting services. We do a lot of reinstatements and suspensions. We do a ton of consulting, getting companies into the guidelines. And that's kind of more of our agency side. And then we have more of the fulfillment side, where we actually power most agencies doing their GMB optimization and ongoing work. And we do work, of course, with some individuals and some multi-locations as well. But I think one big distinction here is that when it comes to, just to kind of dovetail into what Joy and David were saying, is that when it comes to GMB, we find that our perfect match of a client is one that doesn't want to worry about what's going on with Google My Business, and they just kind of want to sit back. They want to go and do their business. They can work with other agencies on link building or content development. We do that too. But, they just don't want to respond to reviews. They don't want to do posts. They don't have the creativity to come up with content or images. And then we find those are our perfect clients because we want to solve that problem. That's a pure business problem at the end of the day. Actually, that's really all I got to say about that.
Okay. We touched a little bit on kind of GMB and kind of pay to play there. There were quite a few kind of questions that sort of popped up in advance of this, like where it's going. I guess big picture, what is kind of Google's agenda is with GMB and sort of pay to play solutions, making the whole thing pay to play. David, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I don't necessarily think it's in. I'm on the side of folks who thought that survey that came out last March or April was bogus. Essentially, it was a rogue employee more than it was a strategic corporate decision on Google's part. From where I stand, I don't necessarily think that it's in Google's interest to start to gate GMB features behind a paywall. They are looking for the best looking profile, in the world for local businesses. They don't want to lose mind share and a customer experience race to a Yelp or an Apple Maps or even vertical services like DoorDash or Grubhub or TripAdvisor, stuff like that. So I think that they want businesses to keep contributing a lot of great content, both textual and visual content. I don't see them gating most of the existing features behind a paywall. What I do think they're very keen to do and will continue to have pressure from shareholders on is to migrate the businesses who are engaging with GMB into more paid services. So we've seen this just in the last couple of months that now for certain categories within the info section of GMB, you now get a customized call to action to try out the AdWords Express or Smart Campaigns product, whatever they're calling that now. So, and we've seen them start to add tiles with call to actions to try out CallJoy, which is their sort of automated answering service that incidentally they're actually helping to create a need for with some of the AI calling that Duplex is making. So, I see them really layering on paid services on top of GMB more than I do updating the sort of free or paid version of current features within GMB.
Okay, so I guess short answer is we don't have to panic. GMB isn't going to become an entirely sort of paid for solution, but you see GMB as being a kind of platform where they'll start to introduce services in and around it and try and sell those into businesses by getting them essentially hooked into the GMB platform as a free product and then upselling into other sort of related services.
Yep. It's a much better summary, much shorter way of saying it.
It's all your ideas. Joy, what do you see was the biggest change in the world of pay-to-play for GMB last year? Was it LSA, or where do you see the big change, and how do you enhance that or use that?
Yeah, I think LSA is pretty substantial. Like if you are in an industry in a market that has LSA, you need to absolutely be doing that. It's huge. So we actually had a client that got a suspension wrongly in LSA, and it was like devastating to him. He was like really upset. It was a locksmith, and he was really upset by the loss of leads. Like it had a pretty substantial impact on his business for that week. It's kind of panicking a bit. So, I mean, it's interesting to see, like, LSA, I think in comparison to like general ads, we see double the lead volume coming in through there. So I still think it's valuable to have both, but local service ads, that's what LSA stands for. I think they are somewhat of a threat to agencies that only do PPC, because you can't really charge an agency fee for it. Like there's really not a whole lot to manage. So I guess if I was a, PPC only agency, maybe that would keep me up at night. I would think about that would be a good time to transition your fee pricing and whatnot. But they're super impactful and super valuable. And I can 100% see Google continuing to expand them to industries that are not service area businesses like they're currently doing with financial planners and lawyers. They're starting to expand there. So I can see that continuing to happen.
Yeah, I think at the very least, LSAs are going to force more transparent pricing on the part of agencies, because it's very clear how much you're paying, not just for an ad, but for a lead. So I think that that certainly redounds to small businesses' benefit and not so much to more opaque agency business models.
Yeah, I think LSA is great. I mean, just from a personal experience, I had to get some work done on a garage door, and I did not even go to the organic results. I went to the Google guarantee. The fact is, it's backed by a guarantee that I'm not going to get a scammy, spammy type of company. I don't have to do all the research. I don't have to go to the BBB. Google's already done this for me. So I completely agree that, with Joy, that it's going to, this year, 2020, I think it's going to roll out to a lot more industries. Hopefully it rolls out to marketing companies. That would be fun. But seriously, yeah, I think it's absolutely, from a pay-to-play standpoint, of course, that's not going to happen. What David's saying as far as, upgrading into other services, that is just something that's very natural. In 2019, we saw them put like the little button for the call to action for just signing up for G Suite right into the Google My Business dashboard. That makes a ton of sense. They want to move people into G Suite. It's inexpensive. It works with their entire ecosystem. Actually gives more trust to a Google My Business profile itself. So, and just side note, Dave, have you tried CallJoy? Not good.
No, I have not.
It's not. It's really bad.
It's a V1. It's a V1, as with everything Google releases. So.
Yeah, I think it's going to die. But anyway, but yeah.
But you don't think it's, you're being kind of V1, when I read the sort of, the kind of background reasons for the problems it solves, there's a genuine problem with business.
Absolutely. Yeah. Managing leads is a huge problem for small businesses. So I think that Google may have a little bit of a targeting issue based on some of the accounts that I see the card in. But I do think it solves a pretty strong pain point for a lot of the businesses, frankly, that we work with at ThriveHive. So, particularly if you're a service area business and you're out on calls all day, and 3 or 4 leads come in, and you may have lost them by the time you get back to your house at night. Same thing if you're a busy massage therapist and you're giving massages or acupuncture or whatever throughout the day, and you can't, you may have availability at 4 o'clock and someone's asking for a 4 o'clock appointment, but you have no way to get back to them. So I think Google is obviously has the resources to compete in this space, and I think that the sort of rationale for the product is very strong.
Okay, great. I do want to open up to kind of Q&As in a minute, but I want to touch on the joyous subject of spam. I know, Ben, we spoke about that yesterday. And
the joyous subject, that's good. That's a good one.
Contentious. This is where we're all going to argue.
So I know, Ben and Joy, you both spend a fair amount of time fighting spam, but I know, Ben, you've got, almost a kind of dedicated service that sort of fights spam.
Yeah.
What sort of success rate are you having with kind of getting things removed? What tactics are you using? And ultimately, what value is that driving for the customer?
Okay, so I'll start with the easy stuff. Success rate, 96.6%. So we keep track of this. We keep track of it exactly to a T every single day. I have a dashboard for it. So we fight spam at scale. And we mainly focus on location spam, I would say, more than anything else. Title spam, business name spam, as we know, especially with yesterday, I put out on Twitter that they actually changed the redressal form. Now, this, of course, was in Joy's guide earlier this month, but they changed the redressal form to actually clarify the fact that if it is not fraudulent information, do not submit keyword stuffed names, period. Same thing with URLs, same thing with addresses. And that's a huge distinction on what the redressal form is all about. It's about fraudulent and inaccurate information. And so, but fighting, title spam and such, basically what Google wants you to do now is just use suggest and edit. Here is where I think it's going to become a little bit contentious, is that as marketers, we all take a look at, and I'm sorry, Myles, because I'm going to go off in a couple different directions here. But suggest and edit, I was just talking to somebody over Google about this yesterday to get a lot more clarity on some of these changes. But with suggest and edit, even if your edits are actually not applied, those are going directly into the machine learning model. And as marketers, we see spam as this huge issue. But for our clients, or actually, should I say for the average merchant, it's not that huge of an issue. So we're very focused on it, right? And so what we do a lot is, we feed the beast basically, and we do a lot of the suggested edits, and we have other methods basically where we go ahead and get rid of it. And the biggest piece of advice that I would give anybody who is doing spam fighting is that you really need to focus on proving as much as possible that a business is actually not real. And by that, I mean, we're talking, there's about, I can't get into all the details that we do, but, or what Google looks for, but I can say that there's between 6 and 12 different types of data points that they look for when they're looking for a spam listing.
Okay. We seem to have lost Joy. Joy, your sort of video stream has kind of gone down. Can you still hear us?
Yeah. Are you not able to see my video?
No, I can't anyway. David and Ben, can you see Joy's camera?
Joy, can't see you.
It just went down. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I'll try to put it back on.
Okay. So David, is spam getting worse, getting better? What's your take on current state of play?
I would say it's about the same. I'll split the difference. I don't think that Google has put any significant resources into significant additional resources into fighting spam. I think that at least the folks that I follow on Twitter, including Mike Blumenthal, Casey Meraz from Juris Digital, they've found plenty of instances of very systemic spam that should be pretty easy to detect with the number of PhDs at Google. That is still prevalent even after the Bedlam update, which supposedly would have, knocked out all of those things as not, natural language and all of that. So I don't see the spam issue getting any better, at least currently, and I kind of don't think it'll get better unless Google is forced to address it by regulators. It's just not a big enough problem for them, and it's not a financially painful enough problem for them.
That seems to me to conflict with the view that they want their very data sort of focused.
Yeah, but it doesn't occur,
Is,
to Ben's point earlier, it doesn't occur enough times. It's just that when it occurs, it's really painful. So I think that it's a whatever 1% or 0.5% type of problem for them, and that's good enough for right now.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct. That's the thing is the percentage of spam is actually, in Google's eyes, from a big data standpoint, very, very small. We see the issues when we're looking for spam. When we saw the big old swarm network, which started last year this time, with the auto accident lawyer network, we saw it as like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is huge. This is terrible. And in some cases it was, and in a lot of cases it wasn't. And the networks, they've started up again. But again, we're seeing certain cases where it is affecting, like, say auto accident lawyers, for instance, really heavily, and also garage door, but it's not as bad, I think, as people think.
Okay. Joy, you were there and you kind of gone again. So Ben, I guess one thing I didn't get from you about spam fighting is the impact that it had. You talked about the success rate, but what does it actually deliver for your client? We managed to get away, to remove, 96% of spam affecting a client. What do you see as the end result? Therefore, is it a service that actually delivers, what clients want?
Yeah, we just got a killer testimonial review actually from a client just this week, and so basically with this one, it's a garage door company. They're out of Dallas-Fort Worth, which actually is affected by tons of garage door spam. And last year, we were able to remove over 1,200, I think, fake listings from the area just in about 3 months. And they saw their business actually tripled. And they have 5 locations, real locations, by the way. But their business tripled. Literally, it's like as soon as we would remove 100, they would spike up and they would get a ton new business. So they said spam fighting is basically the best SEO investment they've ever made.
And presumably they've done a fair amount of other optimization work. In the meantime, they're kind of wetting the wings. You can almost kind of just sort of sweeping away the kind of clutter at the top of the GMB.
Oh yeah. They've done everything. They're continually building links. They're building content. GMB is totally optimized. In this specific case, we're talking about a garage door company that has physical locations. So they're already. I mean, they've got all of the basic ingredients to rank well. The only thing that was holding them back was these fake lead gen listings.
Okay, that's fascinating. So it really kind of sort of proves that there's a lot of value to be had from an agency point of view in terms of delivering that action, sort of selling that survey. Great, guys. We've got about 8 minutes to go. I know, David, you're going to sort of shoot off in a minute, so please feel free, David, just to kind of clock off as and when you need to. We're going to switch to the kind of Q&A now. A number of questions have come in. The kind of BrightLocal marketing guys working behind the scenes have plucked out a few of those questions and have put them on a sort of page for me, which I'm going to sort of switch over to in a second. And I'm going to read out some of these questions. Now, actually, there are a load more questions that have come through. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, but what we will do is we'll also kind of download all these questions and we'll, in some way, which I haven't yet thought through, and not over-promising, we will get answers to the questions. Either I'll lean on the panelists to kind of give some insights, or we'll get some insights, and we'll find a way to answer all those questions for you kind of after the event, either within the kind of blog roundup that we do of the webinar or somehow. So we get answers. We're going to answer probably, let's say 6 to 10 kind of questions now specifically. So and I haven't seen these, so it's all kind of make me sort of slightly blind. So I guess, David, as you're kind of still with us, want to make the most of it. How with reviews, and we talked a little about around the reviews and the impact of those. You've got the kind of Google local guides, of which you can be rated. I think it's 0 to 10 in terms of the status of Google local guides. Is Google going to start using things like kind of Google Guide rating as a determination of, or give it more weighting essentially? So reviews from Google Guides get more value, or elements provisioned by Google Ads will get more value as a way of adding in kind of layers of value to kind of UGC content in Google?
Unfortunately, yes. I think that you certainly see Google doubling down on its investment in the guides program to the point where guides are giving non-answers to Q&A and accumulating points. So I think that just by virtue of the very limited but apparently persuasive incentives that Google offers as part of that program, we're starting to see more stuff from local guides showing up on business profiles. So I think that it may not be that local guides are rated any more heavily in the algorithm, but they're starting to leave more reviews. So they're making up a bigger percentage of the overall review corpus. Is kind of how I look at it. I do think that Google, I think that their review algorithm is not nearly as sophisticated as Yelp's. I think that there are obvious networks, as Ben was saying, that of fake reviews and that sort of thing that I would have guessed that they would have spotted by now. But I think that the more reviews from actual people you get, whether a local guide or not, I do think that those will stick and continue to have more value in the future.
Okay, great. Anyone else want to feel they need to kind of comment on that, or should I go to the next question? Nick?
Yeah, I would say move on.
Okay, all right.
Not really much to say about local guides except local guides.
Joy, questions kind of come in, and we did touch on this, but the question is, how much do you push or recommend local service ads as part of your typical offering for a client? So does that differ for clients? And also with the local service ads, what sectors do you think it's going to see it kind of rolling out to in 2020?
Yeah, so I think they're going to continue to roll out to the industries that they're already in, just new markets. I think that any business we have that qualifies for local service ads, we tell them to do it. Like the cost per lead is not very high. The volume is really high. So there's no reason really not to do it. But yeah, I would expect that they would continue to roll it out for like immigration attorneys, real estate agent attorneys, those types of industries. There's already certain markets there. So I think they're just going to try and roll it out nationwide first.
Okay.
Wouldn't it be great if they rolled it out for personal injury?
Oh, could you imagine?
They might lose too much money on AdWords from that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, those cost per clicks of $200, or I don't know.
George, did you mention, in what reply earlier, or your answer on the questions, did you say in terms of local service ads versus traditional kind of PPC, you saw a lot more ROI and value from local service ads? Yeah,
usually about double. So like volume wise, it's about double what you get from ads, but I still say to do both. But, it's volume wise. I think it's just because they look so great, and they even have photos in them now. Like they're just adding all these features to make them stand out. So they don't even really look like ads. So I think that's a winning point for Google.
Interesting. We did a study about, I think, 18 months ago, looking at the share of clicks when local service ads kind of came out. And now I think they've evolved quite a lot. It might be time to do that study. I completely landed my marketing team in it from that. So not going to do it, guys. A question for you, David. We talked a little bit about kind of GMB and taking actions, such as responding to reviews and the value that those have. Does Google look at, your kind of like sign of life within your GMB profile and do anything with it? So if you're logging in, you're being active and you're just doing things and, your signs of life as an active profile, does that have any impact at all on rankings or how Google trusts that particular business?
I would guess extremely minimal, if any. I think that they're much more concerned with consumer signs of life at your business, right? So if consumers are clicking the call button or clicking for driving directions or clicking through to your website, those kinds of, or uploading photos from your business, those kinds of things I think probably do have a more meaningful impact on rankings. One thing that I'm not sure that we'll ever be able to empirically test, but Google does have access to something like 75% of all credit card transactions in the United States through deals with the major credit card companies. And they may even be looking at point of sale swipes. I wouldn't I certainly wouldn't doubt that from an AdWords standpoint. I don't know that they've extended that into GMB and organic stuff, but that's the level of granularity that they are probably, someone in Google's data science team is looking at the exhaust from all of that consumer activity, and that's the sign of life I think would matter for rankings.
Interesting. God, so it's actually 75% of transaction.
Yeah, there's a Washington Post article about this in I think even as far back as 2017 that Google has done deals with I presume Visa and MasterCard based on that percentage.
Is that to understand what the number of transactions that happen in a store?
All credit card transactions, I think. So it could also be e-commerce. I'll see if I can.
His tinfoil hat.
I'll see if I can. I do. I'll see if I can tweet out that link after the webinar.
Yeah, that would be great. Great, but absolutely terrifying. Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes. So I want to kind of sort of wrap this up, and I'm going to leave each of you to answer this kind of question. So looking ahead, we imagine a year in advance from now, and what you're expecting kind of coming down the pipe. How do you think you'll have adapted or changed or modified either your tactics or approaches or your execution over this year to improve and move your businesses forward? Ben, why don't you please answer that first?
Sure. I don't think we're going to change much. It's really, I think the SEO game has always been observe, learn, test, and adapt. And so, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, obviously, this year. So we don't have a lens inside Google, but something is going to come out. We're going to try it. And if it's good and it's good for the business, then we adopt it. It's like, for instance, this year, it's like short names, they came out. Well, great. Okay. So there was a little bit of problem when they first rolled out. So that was the testing phase. We found there's some learning there. And then we found out that, after it stabilized, that short names were fantastic for our clients to be able to get reviews. So yeah, I would just say nothing is really going to change.
Okay. David? You're muted.
My computer is really slowing down now that I answered a chat. Nothing major to add to what Ben was saying.
Okay. David, you to go. Please feel free to. Thank you very much for your time today.
For sure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, brilliant. David, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
And George, I guess sort of, how do you see you potentially evolving, the offering that Sterling Sky provides this year?
Yeah, I would say one thing as an agency, if you're not doing this already, is to make sure the way that you're tracking ranking, and I realize this kind of came up earlier, tracking ranking I think is important for an agency to do for troubleshooting, figuring out, what's changed. We don't use it as a metric really to report to clients on, but if you are tracking ranking, I think it's really key to be tracking from multiple search location points if you're not doing so already. So if you've got a dentist and they're located in 90210 and all you're doing is tracking from 90210, you are missing a big part of the picture. So tracking from multiple zip codes, I think, is key. And for certain industries, even geo coordinates are necessary, like dentists and restaurants that are really hyper local. So I'd say as an agency, that's something if you're not doing already needs to happen these days with the way that ranking works.
Okay, great.
I would agree with Joy on that one, actually. We've just, Local Falcon's been around for a long time, but we're just starting to get our clients really accustomed to Local Falcon because they've always been very, am I ranking, at my location, but how am I ranking, around myself, around the city? So we've started using that as well, actually.
And I guess to answer that, somebody may be asking, will we be adapting our own sort of ranking engines? We will this year be introducing something that is pretty similar, but hopefully an improvement on what kind of Local Falcon sort of does. So providing the service to our kind of customers. So looking forward to kind of rolling that out and announcing it sort of fairly soon. Okay, guys. Well, listen. I can see a few people are kind of logging off now. People are kind of probably going on to what they've got to do today. It's been an amazing number of chats and kind of comments and questions coming through. So thank you everyone who's listened in and been so engaged throughout this. It's been really good to kind of keep an eye on kind of conversations and to see you all helping each other out and pitching in and answering kind of questions. And it's just such a great sign of kind of interest and engagement in the industry. People are also kind of willing to help each other out, which is one of the reasons why I've loved working in local search for the last kind of 10 years. And that's so we look forward to running many more webinars this year.